The fundamental nature of human flourishing is about connection. Our connection to ourself, to others, to nature, to the sacred. So if you build a whole economy and a whole society around individual people consuming and not really thinking about community, social life, social trust, responsibility, character, virtue, all these things, you could kind of see, if you play that out, it's kind of where we're at today, which is we've kind of let go of the responsibility to each other, to one another.
We already know what helps. Connection is the cure. It's our deep and meaningful relationships that give us hope and healing. Welcome to This Helps. I'm Marlon Morgan. Join us as we practice authentic and vulnerable conversations that inspire us to go deeper with the people in our own lives.
I've met a fair share of Rons, and some great, some not so great. I think I met my favorite Ron on this episode.
1,000,000% my favorite Ron. Yeah. Really good Ron.
Hey, how worried are you about AI?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah.
So worried all the time. Like always.
Hey, do you remember I know, you're a little younger than me, but when the internet first came out, which is a wild thing to say, I remember AT&T had these commercials, and I remember them because I loved Magnum PI and Tom Selleck.
Listeners who don't know our ages are going to think that you're 70 and I'm 65 after you said that.
I loved it because my grandma watched it.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I was like, this is definitely the best thing she watched. And AT&T had commercials like for the internet. It was just kind of like a businesswoman was trying to say goodnight to her kid. He just kept wanting his mom, and then she showed up like on a early stage FaceTime and said goodnight to the kid.
No. Huh.
And he's like, have you ever said goodnight from across the country or something?
Okay.
I don't remember exact words, but I feel like that. And then now looking at what the internet actually is, I don't know. I kind of feel like they buried the lead in a lot of ways. I feel like that about AI, and I feel like no one really knows, and it's really hard to speculate.
That's what stresses me out. That's why I'm always worried about it. I know that thankfully, as we have learned over the last year or so, there are really smart, thoughtful people who are doing a better job speculating than I'll ever be able to do, and that brings me some relief.
But none of them are as smart as AI will be in like a month.
I know, horrifying.
That there is no other super intelligence like as a human.
Yeah, it's so funny when it's just the two of us. It's so easy for me to get really alarmist, and then these like wonderful people that we talk to come in, and I get to feel relief for a little while.
Knowing someone like Ron Ivey exists, and he's not like in a basement somewhere. He's like all over the world giving talks at the G20. Heard of it? Rome. I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people who are maybe feeling like us, a little bit grim, a little bearish, if you will, on AI. And I mean, all I want to do is just talk about my fears, but instead I think we need to actually let people experience the hope that we did just now with the conversation we had.
Should we tell folks a little bit about Ron Ivey, who are unfamiliar with him?
I mean, that's one heck of a bio. You want to read it?
Ron has spent more than 2 decades working across. He's worked in every kind of sector that you can.
I've never seen a resume like this.
It's unbelievable.
I've never seen a bio like it.
Government, academia, nonprofits, tech. And he's asking big questions about humanity, technology, what actually helps people live good lives. He's the founder of Noēsis Collaborative, which we'll talk about a little bit this week and then even more in our next episode. It's a new initiative focused on how emerging technologies are designed and governed. He's a research fellow with Harvard's Human Flourishing program. He's done a ton of important work over there. He's advised everyone from global policy leaders to tech executives. He served as a policy advisor in the U.S. Senate, speaks widely about AI, social connection, and, as I said, human flourishing. And we're going to dig into all of his work and what's at stake and how we relate to each other and what we can do. And in 2 weeks, we'll talk about Furbies. It's a lot. There's a lot of good stuff in here.
Much like Ron's very impressive bio, there's a lot of information in the conversation we had. It was almost 2 hours long. And so I think we'll split this one up so you can hear. Don't get discouraged, though, because we do talk a lot about the terrifying things that could happen. But then we talk a lot about how Ron has literally made a playbook so that those things don't happen. And hopefully the right people will listen in time.
Yeah. That first half is a lot of, I would say, kind of context and problem setting and really digging into how we got here. And then in a couple of weeks, we're really going to dig into the solutions. It's really good and hopeful.
That's the most hopeful I've felt about AI, that someone has a plan and has devoted a lot of their life simply to how we can use maybe the most important, development, intervention, industrial revolution type moment maybe we've ever had as human beings, and how we can do it in a way that's actually going to make our lives better, make us more connected, and give us even more hope. Today we have Ron Ivey on the show. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Marlon.
Well, people have just heard your long and illustrious bio. They're all wondering how one human being can do all of those things and still look, I want to say, younger, middle-aged, I would say, on the younger side.
I just turned 48 last week, so there we go.
I had so many emotions preparing to talk to you. I'll give you a little bit of background. I think you might remember this. I had a friend, Brittany, who in 2024, when we were at South by Southwest, we broke off. I went to a different, I was talking, which was really cool at South by, and she went to go see you instead of me. And came back, was texting the whole time, and you'll never believe this guy is so great. He's thinking about how AI is going to affect us. He's thinking about how technology is affecting humanity. He's doing the research. He has, he's advising policy. And right now he's on a panel with the former CEO of Tinder. And essentially her text was, because I just reread it, telling her that her new project is a dystopian nightmare. So, I don't know if you said that, and here's your chance to say I didn't say that, but that was her idea.
I don't know if I said that. I think I think I had very strong words. I don't think I said that in our time at South by Southwest. I'm not sure, but I definitely said that online about 6 months earlier when her company was released and her investor, Sequoia, was promoting her investment as the solution to the loneliness epidemic. And I had a pretty, let's say, intense reaction. Some of the media have called it a hot tweet, mean tweet, whatever. I'm pretty vanilla, so don't go to my social media for those kinds of things. But in that moment I wasn't, and it kind of set off this chain reaction with her, which was cool. I mean, she reached out immediately after that tweet and said, "Hey, this is the project I'm working on. I want to talk to you more about what I'm doing." And to her credit, we had an incredible set of conversations in person, and that has led into a whole set of conversations with the industry afterwards. And that's how we got to South by Southwest. That was how we got to that event. Was that meme tweet kind of set off that chain reaction?
So how much I don't know if you watched wrestling growing up. And of course I'm asking for a friend, but how much when you go out on stage, you already kind of know what each other think and believe. You sort of know, at that point she has investors, of course there's pressure to make money, be successful, but you're out there kind of giving a different perspective. How much of that is something that you agreed on ahead of time to give your perspective, and how much of it is just like, hey, new stuff comes up when we're in front of all these people and we're just going to go for it?
I mean, I don't remember talking about the panel beforehand in terms of what we were going to discuss. Typically, you do that to some degree, even with the panelists, with the larger group. But in this context, we had a series of conversations about the nature of, human flourishing. We kind of had a deeper conversation about what is that and how does that relate to chatbots that are mimicking human relationship and human language. At that point, I think I've already written about this publicly and shared this, that I was worried that there was going to be delusional behavior because of some of the research of one of my colleagues that, I think I'm excited about this helps, this whole concept, because you guys talk about connection so much. It's core to how we think, how we understand truth. And I was worried that if they were introducing chatbots that are kind of like us in the way that we talk and interact, especially to people that are lonely and socially isolated, that could cause problems with delusional behavior and truth. This was back in 2023 and 2024 when I first shared those. So I had shared those concerns with her. She knew what I was going to say on the panel in that sense. But I think the cool thing that happened is just being in person, having an authentic conversation, listening to each other, seeing each other's perspectives. I don't agree with her. I don't necessarily agree on all the things she's doing, but I've appreciated what I've learned from her, and I've appreciated the engagement, and I appreciate the idea that she had, which was, hey, let's have a bigger group of people talk about this together in a in-person conversation, which really led to incredible things. So even though you can disagree, you can actually have fruitful conversations with people you disagree with. That's what I learned from the whole thing.
Well, in some ways, I think the medium is the message there, because you talk a lot about us as a society, or even as, I don't know, a species. I don't know how you want to say it, but being able to stay in a room and disagree with each other, and even some of the effects that sort of social AI could have on our ability to do that, or have already had.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we're learning as we study human flourishing within the networks I'm in, within the different programs, and in the conversations we're having, is that dialogue, difference in opinion, engagement, it's all part of the collective intelligence of being human and being part of humanity. And it's part of, I think, what's been so successful of democracy, is that you have different opinions and different ways of thinking. What's difficult both about social media and now social AI is that creates these feedback loops where either our ideas are reinforced, that happened in social media with the algorithms, or with social AI, it's sycophantic, or it like reinforces and says things you want to hear. I was trying to learn French. I was trying to do a panel in French, and I do these things where I commit to do things that are probably outside of my capability, and just to push myself. And I was practicing with ChatGPT, and it actually was super helpful in terms of engagement, in terms of learning French. But I also wondered if it was just, telling me how great I was when I really wasn't that great. It didn't help my confidence. It helped my confidence.
Gen Z, I think, calls it glazing. I think ChatGPT does a lot of glazing, and just sort of, and that's, I think you use sycophantic. I think because of ChatGPT, people now know what obsequious means, because, I feel so, this is a whole different thing. I don't want to go off on a grind this axe here, but it might be important. I actually tried to get GPT to stop being so, I feel like, condescended constantly. Like, oh, that's a great idea, Marlon. Just like, what? Stop it. And so I did that. And 2 weeks ago, it gave me the option to, okay, I can be more direct. Would you like me to be more direct? And I said, yeah. So now every time I ask a question, it says stuff like, here's the straight here's the straight talk, no BS, or like it's like weird. It's like a New Jersey mobster or something. New Jersey, that's for you, Andrea. But yeah, I feel like it's like trying to be something it's clearly not from what I know of it in the past. But I feel even more talked down to, because it's like, yeah, I know you like straight talk, bro, and I can't stand it. It is rough.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's one of the things that, I've been reflecting on with colleagues, also with folks on the tech side, is so much, at least in my life, but then also we see it in the research and in the data, is that friction and difficulty and working through conflict, reconciliation, learning how to forgive. I have kids, like I'm teaching them how to engage in conflict with each other, the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old, and how do you deal with that? And I think about, my marriage, my best friendships actually have a degree of conflict built into them, because they really sharpen me and they make me better. And sometimes I'm friends with people that are to some degree the opposite of me. And we think a lot of us do that, to kind of build our own and engagement with a different personality that we like and are interested in. And the friction there in those kinds of relationships actually has been really fruitful. So if you take a chatbot that is kind of eliminating that friction or giving you a kind of weird friction in your case, that's just strange or bizarre, right?
Yeah.
And for someone, I mean, I know you're in your 20s, so this is a different kind of experience. But for people in their teens,
certainly, I'm definitely not twice that old. Yeah.
Yeah. People in their teens or kids, that there's targeting towards kids, they don't have the counterfactual of, having these kind of adult conversations where they could say that's weird, right?
Right.
So if
that's
they're
just
only
normal.
feedback loops, they're just normal, right? And so you don't know that there's a good thing about friction. It actually is, you have to deal with conflict, and if you can get through it, you get around the rock, there's actually a potential friendship that can come out of that conflict.
I really appreciate the way you're explaining this, Ron, because I've heard you explain it in much more academic terms. And I was thinking I was maybe going to have to ask you to really slow things down for us. But I appreciate, because, a lot of our listeners are coming at this from a life that is like, and me included to some extent, it's like, I'm just trying to get through this day. Like, I'm just trying to, so why do I need to care about what AI is doing to us as a culture? And I was slapped in the face with it a couple of months ago. We got a chance to talk to Nina Vasan and Daria Djardjevic. They're doing some sort of similar research, for Common Sense Media at Stanford, on how the use of AI essentially, frictionlessness, and also just, the information they're getting. They're focused more on the, being able to get information so quickly and easily, and how that sort of degrades our skills, or as you've called it in the past, de-skilling. Can you talk to us about what de-skilling is?
Yeah, so part of that comes from an excellent professor, Shannon Valor, who's now at the University of Edinburgh. But she's, I think, one of the key people that's put that forward as an idea. And then we've been looking at it specifically related to social and emotional skills. Okay. So as you get older, you learn both as a child, and then with your family, then with your friends, then with the wider network of people. You learn how to interact in society. You learn how to be kind. You learn how to be a good listener. You learn, or you don't. You learn how to work through problems, like what we're talking about. So there are these set of like social capabilities or emotional capabilities that are empathy, listening, all these skills. What we're concerned about is that the interaction with the chatbot, for people that are older, it might de-skill them. For younger kids, they may never develop those skills. Particularly if there's a big push to have kids in front of chatbots at schools and on screens. If they're sitting in front of a screen for hours a day, which some are in certain contexts, and they're interacting with the chatbot, and they're not dealing with this kind of messy, difficult set of conversations with their peers or with their teachers, they're not working those muscles. A good analogy I heard was when you go to the gym, do you bring a forklift to the gym?
Great.
No,
No,
you don't.
no.
Yeah, why would you? Right? Right. You
Maybe
won't
to
work the
lift
muscles.
myself out of the chair at the gym to
Yeah,
actually
exactly,
do work.
exactly.
But yeah, no.
Exactly. I skipped today. That was partly why I was just too tired to do it. But I think that's the point. Like in education and growing up, especially kind of in adolescence, but then also too in our own life, if you think about COVID, kind of what we went through, there was a little bit of a de-skilling at scale, with us. Like, remember that moment when we all tried to go back to being in relationship and community? Some people haven't really gone back, to some degree, but part of it was that de-skilling happened during that time where you kind of lose, okay, how do I get together with people? How do I, communicate not on a Zoom? How do I just relax, have a beer?
We all had social anxiety, and like the minute we had to put our my kids call them, when you're wearing sweatpants all the time and you put on jeans, they call them hard pants. So I feel like when you had to put your hard pants back on, you all of a sudden had to socialize. And so how uncomfortable jeans are and navigating social, situations, it was too much.
Right. So that's I think fundamentally what we're worried about with chatbots in particular, and their use in education or being marketed in toys, marketed in kind of kids games. There's a massive incentive, and as that common sense media, I think they've done some really good polling on how many kids are actually using chatbots and engaging with chatbots. I think it's 1 in 3 have developed a relationship with the chatbot. And then I think the other cool thing about that report, I don't know if you guys talked about it, was how much parents actually know in terms of the engagement. And it's almost the reverse, like the parents just don't know that their kids are engaging with them.
No, and I actually want to get to that because I was doing some holiday shopping this year and at Costco, and I was kind of thinking under the impression that that's still for the future, and when that's like at mass market. And I walked in probably that first row that they have all the toys in, and there was a chatbot toy. It was like a little robot, and I can't imagine. I'm sure it's not being mean to the kid or making it unhappy, but I took a picture of it and just kind of decided I wouldn't talk about it because it felt horrible to see it. But that, if it's at Costco, and shout out, I love Costco. I shouldn't, but I do. That's my New Jersey. I wish I was born in an actual warehouse. Yeah.
Easy access to everything you need. Easy access.
Yeah. It makes me feel so, I just feel like, hey, there's plenty of everything. The world is staying the same temperature in here anyway, and everything's fine. But yeah, so all that to say, can we, compare a world where we're selling parents chatbots to sort of keep their kids busy? Can we talk about that, but compare it to your concept of why you would use flourishing instead of happiness?
I think, first, when you think about a chatbot in any kind of context, whether that's a toy or an educational tool, or even kids getting on ChatGPT, the way that they're engaging it, some of the scarier cases have been when they've started in an educational purpose and it actually has veered into abuse or even, in really tragic situations, suicide. That's the danger side. That's the safety side of it. And I think there's a lot of great conversations, and we've been part of that as well. I think we're trying to say, hey, it's also important to talk about the other side, which is the flourishing side. So the opposite of languishing. And when you're building toys, or you're buying toys, or you're building a product or buying a product, should you be thinking about, is this helping me achieve my goals and aspirations, which typically are helping me have a sense of meaning and purpose in my life? Being happy is in part of that. Happy is part of flourishing, life satisfaction. Do I have close relationships, which you've already talked about? Mental, physical health, financial material stability. These are all elements of flourishing, and when you look holistically at it. And what we're evaluating, what we're talking about, both with the product people and the tech people, but also the policy people, but also just communities. How do you start to think about whether this tech, whether it's AI or robots or whatever it is, or social media, is it really helping me flourish, or is it sending me in the direction of languishing, right? And with toys, I think I'm most concerned that one, we just don't know. We're literally 3 years into a completely new era in human history. We have never in human history had a machine that can talk like us and have agency or the ability to kind of make decisions as you're going.
That's kind of the scariest part, I think, is
Right.
what is it doing? It's deciding whether or not it's going to give me a compliment.
Right.
Or come out of nowhere. Oh, I wanted to talk to you about this. I bought recently I have another day job in addition to being a host, and we have a company we have therapists in schools, and it's great. I recently bought a Google Pixel in order to see if that would be a good tool for our folks to have, our therapists in schools to have. And within 2 days, I signed up for Google Messages, which I'd never heard of before, and because I'm typically an iMessage guy. But 2 days later, I didn't use the Google Messages, and then I looked at the phone, and it said, "Hey, it's Gemini." Gemini sent me a Google message and said something to the effect of, "Just wanted to let you know I was here for you." Okay, creepy. First of all, I didn't ask. Second of all, it said I can do things like get you information, and it ended with, or if you just want to have a good, fun talk with someone.
Yeah.
I have to be careful, but what the F?
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, and you saw that with Meta's AI companion in the WhatsApp messaging. And yeah, it's just kind of automatic. It's just kind of there, right? Now, full disclosure, I'm using ChatGPT. I'm using Gemini. I engage with it, but I think what my advice to the companies we've published these recommendations is, why do you have to make it human-like? Why do you have to make it so engaging and emotionally attaching to people in terms of the way that it relates, especially for kids? Is there a way to make it practical? Because the engagement can be very practical and you get a lot of insight from it. Sometimes you really have to check in terms of the data, and you have to know, because there's low quality things that come through. So I'm not anti-AI. I'm not anti-chatbots per se. I just have serious questions about the way that they designed that and the way that they didn't really ask you. The way how did that impact, right. How did that make you feel in terms of your own agency? I mean, I would assume that was, not
bad.
Great to just bad. Yeah. Right.
I felt the same way. Yeah. It made me feel like, okay, I thought I was signing up for the equivalent of iMessage, and Siri's never texted me an iMessage. So why is Google doing it? I guess it kind of makes sense, if you're looking to engage and continue to get a profit, and who knows, maybe with this new update, Apple, when they have the smarter Siri, they'll do the same thing. I don't know, but I did not like the fact that I was going about my regular day. I did not need anything. And for anyone feeling, and this is a lot of people all the time, feeling vulnerable or lonely in that situation, let's say I was like, oh, awesome. And then I started, just talking with it. And then at what point do I turn back to the regular world? And you've talked about this quite a bit, because if my brain has evolved or has been programmed to eventually, to survive and to feel dopamine and to feel like everything's okay. And I have the pain of loneliness, which is a really important message for us to tell us to go talk to other people. But I'm sort of numbing the pain with something that's really not solving the problem. Where does that lead?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that dynamic and that situation, where a lot of people are in, is there's two parts. There's loneliness, which is like the feeling that you talk about, and that sense of pain. And it's kind of the dichotomy or difference between the relationships we want and the relationships we have. And we feel that, hey, I don't really have the friends I want, or man, I'm going through, having two little kids right now. And, we just don't have the social life we did, 10 years ago. And it's really hard to be a parent, and you don't really have time to go out. And when you do, and then you host people and there's, kids screaming about, you just feel that like, I feel a little lonelier in this time period in my life, right? I've felt that in the last few years, right?
Same.
So that's a normal feeling. Definitely felt it during COVID. And then the other side of it is actually social isolation, like actually physically being isolated or not having as much contact with each other. And that can happen too. And that's happening to a lot of people. Now, what is really interesting about chatbots, and we're in very early days and we're still trying to understand what the actual impact is, but what we're seeing is that the actual interaction with the chatbot, when you're on Gemini or I'm on ChatGPT and we're interacting, it may actually decrease our feeling of loneliness, but it actually might increase our social isolation. And from a neuroscience and longevity and impact on your brain and your mental health, and just like your actual ability to build relationships and stay, social isolation is just as worrying and maybe more worrying to increase. So it actually could decrease our loneliness, but increase our social isolation, if that makes sense.
Wasn't there a study done on college students not too long ago that kind of said that it actually, regular usage of a chatbot did increase their loneliness or their perceived loneliness? I can't remember what that one was.
Yeah, there's been different studies in terms of the impact. I think the most interesting study actually came from MIT Media Lab and OpenAI.
That was the one, yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think what was most interesting about that is that the amount of time a person spent on the chatbot is actually the leading indicator of whether it's going to cause loneliness, social isolation, or delusional behavior, or other psychological and negative impacts. So if you're spending, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of time, engaging with the chatbot and nobody else, you're going to be at higher risk of some of these negative impacts. That's my understanding of what the study says, and we're seeing that in other data as well. I will say I've had to be open to, could there be benefits to the interaction?
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, can AI actually make us more human?
So yeah, I think what we're looking at is one, just like what's the framework of how we measure it, right? And we've been gathering together researchers to kind of look at, okay, what are you seeing? What are you studying? What's the differences here? And there seems to be, or very early days, that there are potential benefits for people that are neurodivergent, that are like me, learning another language or learning another culture, and it may help develop some of those social skills, or it may actually help with some of the social anxiety to practice certain interactions and then go out.
Kind of like training wheels.
Yeah, like training wheels. Yeah, and I've seen that in my own experience with the learning the language and learning other cultures. Like, how does this work in a French context? And again, it may or may not be right, and it may be tell me what I hear. But I think what it could that's a potential positive in terms of the way that it can benefit. The other side of this as well is there might be benefits in terms of the interaction, in terms of creativity. And intellectual development. We don't know, though. I think there's not enough data to know whether it's really improving our skills or degrading them. I think there's more concern that I'm seeing in terms of the data, in terms of the negative impacts, especially on the social and emotional side of things, and just common sense that if you've got a person that's engaging with something that's really affirming and engaging and it says everything you want to hear and pulls you in further and further, and there's incentives underneath it. I think that's the other thing that people don't think about or see, is that underneath that conversation is a business model, and that business model is no different than the one that you have that's making you more addicted to your phone, making you addicted to social media, making you addicted to reading, doom scrolling and reading things that you probably doesn't really help your mental health, doesn't really help you achieve your aspirations. So if that business model is underneath a relationship, think about your best friendships. Do they have a business model underneath them? No. If they do, then there's probably a problem. They're a deal friend,
Right.
they're not a real friend, right? Like,
Nice. I've never heard that
Yeah.
before.
Love
That makes
that.
sense.
yeah, you know who that.
I'm going to write The Art of the Deal Friend after this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you've interacted with people like that. You're like, you're in this for the deal. You're not in it for the real, right? You're not in it
Yeah.
for all my flat sides and my, my needs or whatever. You're just here for whatever you want. And that's the chatbot. The chatbot is not there for you. It's there for 4 companies, 5 companies, their business model, and their advertisers. That's who it's there for. So don't believe that, hey, I'm here to talk and listen to you and be your friend. I mean, maybe not.
I don't know what analogy is better here, Ron. Maybe I'm going to give you a choice of 2 and then a third one that I didn't think of. But 1, how similar is this to what we have seen and now learned about the trajectory of social media usage, especially for kids? And 2, how similar is it to the incredible Keanu Reeves movie trilogy, The Matrix?
The first question, this has been an interesting conversation with both the industry side and the academic side and the policy folks and all the communities wrestling through this, institutions, faith-based institutions. There's this thing of, people were so worried about TV with kids, or people were so worried about video games. Is this really just another moral panic? Right. And my comment was like, maybe, but should we have panicked a bit more about social media? We had this kind of starry eye that social media was going to connect us, connect the world. We're all going to be friends because of social media. How did that turn out, right? And that did not turn out too well until we're living in that. I think the same fundamentals, and that's why I like how a friend and colleague, Henry Shevlin, calls it social AI, is it's very similar in that nature to social media, and that it's built on that same advertising model. It's built for engagement. They said, 2 years ago, we're not going to use ads on our chatbots. What happened 2 weeks ago?
Right. Yeah.
We're
Sam
using
Altman
ads in our
came out.
chatbots,
So, yeah, he
right?
said, hey, sorry, dudes, got to do it. Yeah. But here's the thing. That's my question, Ron, because you can have a visionary, a person that wants to change the world, that wants to make things better for us as a human race, and they start out that way. But if you don't have investors behind that, pressuring you to make the money, that might make sense. But the whole reason for when you start a corporation in this country, anyway, I can tell you, I know because I've done it. The thing that you say that you're doing is this company will do anything lawful that will make a profit.
Right.
And I think that really helps us understand that even if Sam Altman or whoever else, I'm not going to go down a list of all people that seem very similar to me and say what their intentions are. But I think eventually someone comes to them and says, hey, if you really want to change the world and you really want to get millions more people using your product, you got to sell these ads because someone else is going to.
Right. And you see all the same dynamic when it comes to kids and some of the more nefarious things that happen to kids. So last year, you saw the Wall Street Journal come out against Meta and talk about what was the internal process of decision making about, do we sell chatbots that can kind of be, sexualized with kids? Where do we draw that line? And the line was pushed further and further in a way that was unethical because of competitors, right? Not necessarily from the top, from their peers, but from below in terms of startups. So that is the kind of the AI behind the AI is the these market forces that you're talking about. And the way that we think about business and the purpose of business and the structures of business, that's not always the way business was governed. The way that, and if you look at the history of business and the history of corporations, they did in the past have more responsibility and social responsibility. That shifted about 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And that we went in another direction. And then in the late 90s and 2000s, particularly with Apple, and with Steve Jobs and the way that whole debacle happened in terms of him leaving and then coming back, and there was a shift in how much power founders were given. And especially in the tech space, you won't see this across most of the other industries. Most of the industries have to have boards, you have to have oversight, especially when you get to bigger companies.
Sure.
And they just don't have the same kind of board governance at the big companies. And so there's just less pressure for them to think about these things and worry about things. They're really in a race with each other to try to get the best, most powerful AI. And they really do, at this point, it seems as if they'll do whatever it takes to do that. There's great people in these companies. I mean, I've engaged with these people. They're amazing people in the companies, but at the top, if you look at the race they're in, it doesn't look like they fundamentally care about your kids, my kids, our kids' futures, right? That doesn't seem like the behaviors that we're seeing over the last few years.
In this system that you're referring to, is essentially our economic system. I think it could be easy for someone listening to say, well, then we should get some new people in there that do the right thing, or, consider how we use this technology before they consider whether or not it's going to make a profit. But those same people, if they have a retirement account or stocks or portfolio or investments of any sort, are they, as shareholders in a company, because, a lot of people hold parts of these companies, right, and they're hoping that no matter what you do, they can retire and they can cash out, and that their company, the one they bet on with their stock, will have made a lot of money. So at what point do we kind of look at ourselves and be like, well, which one is it? Do we want a healthy society? Do we want humans to flourish? Or do we want to go on like 16 cruises and die once we get, retired or whatever?
Right. I think that's actually come up in some of the conversations with the tech leaders that I've talked to, that they have tried to do things internally. I won't talk about who they were specifically, but then
we need names, Ron. No, I'm just kidding.
With the investors came to them, the board members said, "This is my retirement." Literally said that, "This is my retirement. Do not screw with this." Mm-hmm. And in one particular case, the particular product decision was making people lonelier, and they couldn't do it because the board pushed back and said, "No, this is our best. This is the heart of our business model, right?
My grandkids will be okay because I have money. Your grandkids are totally screwed." Right.
Now that doesn't really add up when you think about it, when you really look at how things are all fit together, but it seems to be a logic that people have at a certain level of our society, that they really don't care in terms of the way that they're executing some of those decisions, and the way that we've moved away from a kind of sense of the common good, sense of social responsibility. If you think about, I think about my grandparents' generation, kind of what they grew up in during the kind of pre-war years, post-war years. There was just a different framework that was in play there, both on like the personal individual level of the company leaders. There was a kind of sense of social responsibility. Now there was problems. There was there was the tobacco industry, all this stuff, but there was still a different framework in place that wasn't a, ruthless, just no holds barred. We don't care if wealth concentrates and, the society falls apart. We have to think about the whole thing together. I think because that generation lived through it when it did. It lived through the 30s when that experiment didn't work too well in the 20s,
Yeah, I feel right? like we have the luxury of sort of forgetting about how bad things can get and how people can treat each other. And without, unless someone's watching Ken Burns documentaries weekly, like myself, shout out Ken Burns.
That's right.
But, unless you're doing that right now, which sadly, mostly you're already retired if you're doing that. But how can we help people remember where this is headed?
You got to keep going back to your own agency and what decisions we have and what choices we have. I think there is a narrative, and some of what I'm saying can reinforce this, and I don't want to do this, but there can be a narrative like, this is inevitable. You can't really make choices. This is going to happen. get on board or you're going to get left out. If your kid's not going to lose a job from AI, it's from someone that knows how to use AI. All these kind of messages get pumped in our brain, right? You know all these messages, you're hearing them, right?
Yeah.
But you have choices. You have choices in the way that you as an individual, as your community, as your local community, what you guys do together, how you think about your life. And we also have choices in the way that we engage with policy. We still do. And I've seen that actually. I've been really, the beginning of last year, I thought, okay, nothing's really going to happen on policy, right? And yet I've been super impressed and excited to see actual, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth, bipartisan collaboration on, policy. I didn't think this was going to happen, right? But it's because it's focused on kids, right? And so there is still, a spectrum of choices you can make in your own life, what products you choose, how you engage, how you choose to live your life in terms of how much time you spend in actual real community, like participating in actual things in real life. You can still do that. You can choose that, right? You don't have to be on your phone all the time. That's a choice we're all making individually. So I think it's important to protect that agency, and then also think about how to be active in politics and in policy, because there's still room to maneuver there. I didn't think, I was cynical about whether it could happen, and I've actually been seeing it happen.
Well, Ron, I love being cynical and negative. It's so easy. And one of my favorite things to do, especially if I have someone really smart who can make me feel better a little bit, that's pretty much what this podcast is. But before we get to the positive side, which I do want to get to, because that's, I would say, in my opinion, the majority of your work has been on solutions for this. And so obviously, we don't want to be the ones putting out these doomsday, obviously the podcast would do great if we did, but we want to put out some actual help for parents, for teachers, for people, adults looking to have their values not totally overwhelmed or changed by, efficiency for efficiency's sake or for someone else's wealth. Before we get there, you used a term that I was not familiar with recently, and it was zombie neoliberalism. Would you be comfortable explaining what that is? Because I purposely didn't look it up because I wanted to hear it from you, because it seemed like it was going to bum me out.
Yeah, so neoliberal, this is interesting that we're going here, but neoliberal is basically what we were just talking about. This idea that we're going to take away the restraints on corporations and take away the restraints on investors and deregulate and globalize and give more free rein to corporations and investors in order to grow the economy and kind of advance prosperity.
Growth at all costs. Is this kind of what I hear you saying?
Yeah, if I were to be generous to that side, which I don't agree with, they were trying to address some of the things in the 70s, late 60s and 70s that, hey, just weren't working with our economy. They were kind of getting slow and difficult. And so they were just trying to unleash this kind of productivity and innovation in the 80s and 90s. The problem with that is it was very individual focused. It was very much, hey, how do you succeed individually? How do you be happy individually? It's all built on this thing called the economic man. Economic person, however we want to frame it, that, hey, if you make rational choices on what products you buy, and those things make you a little bit more satisfied, if you pursue that, that should be the focus of our economy, right? Now, the problem with that, in being an individual, making your life about buying stuff, you can see where that would go, right? If you think about the fundamental nature of human flourishing is about connection. Our connection to ourselves, to others, to nature, to the sacred. So if you build a whole economy and a whole society around individual people consuming and growing economy to have the consumption that they want, and not really thinking about community, social life, social trust, belonging, responsibility, character, virtue, all these things. You could kind of see, if you play that out, it's kind of where we're at today, which is, it's just we've kind of let go of the responsibility to each other, to one another.
I feel like that's where I'm at half the time. If I, upset, I'm looking for a quick hit of dopamine way before I'm looking to call an old friend.
Right.
Obviously,
Me
one
too.
of those things. Yeah, I mean, it's just so easy. But I hear what you're saying in that if humans do become batteries in the matrix, then they can't flourish.
Yeah, back to the Matrix. I think, the interesting thing about that is there's this kind of thing out there that Neo is embedded in that is driving his life, and he doesn't really understand.
Neo, the character, I just want to make sure everyone knows, not neoliberalism necessarily, but
Hey, there you go.
Neo,
You made the connection. But I think that Matrix is really fascinating. I think, if you look at science fiction, they've been really good at predicting certain things, like the movie Her. If you watch that movie, the movie Her, that's where we're at, right?
Yeah.
That was 13 years ago.
I can't believe that.
That Spike Jones did that. Right. So I think the Matrix is interesting in terms of how it kind of how the main character, Neo, gets embedded in a system that in his first part of the story he doesn't see. He can't see.
Doesn't even know he's in it.
It doesn't know he's in it. And I think there's an element of what you're talking about when you use that phrase, neoliberal. You said neoliberalism, zombie neoliberalism.
Yeah. Just to be clear, Ron, I didn't know that phrase before 2 years ago. Before 2 days ago. Yeah. I feel like a politician that just lost the race because you're like, yeah, right before you did the thing I did.
Yeah, you did. No, I did. I'm at fault here. I'm at fault here. Yeah,
I didn't think it was bad. I actually am glad. Real quick, just to give you a little credit before we go on, there's another book on acceptance and commitment therapy where a friend of mine, Joseph Cherokee, and the co-author, Louise Hayes, they're both in Australia, and they talk about us living in zombie land where there's no color and there's only work and there's only buying things. And the whole idea behind acceptance and commitment therapy is getting back to what your values are and what you really want to accomplish in this short life. And is that really the way you want to keep yourself safe from all these hard things, is just to continually want and buy? And so I was excited actually to hear someone else say something about zombies, because I thought, well, maybe this is connected, and I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. It's definitely connected. The way you articulated, the way you connected that dots. The zombie part of it is we've known to some degree that this is not working as a system, and when it comes to policymakers, but there's nothing that's come and replaced it. So it's just kind of still operating. That's why I called it the AI behind the AI. It's kind of the machine behind the machine. It's the Matrix, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's this way of seeing the world that everything gets flattened to, is it useful? Is it pleasurable? Is it going to give me a hit of dopamine? And what's really interesting is when there's a psychiatrist, Ian McGilchrist, that has studied the brain, and he got fascinated by the brain having two different sides. Why do we have a right brain and a left brain? And there was kind of that pop psychology kind of, hey, the left brain people are this way, the right brain. He was like, no, that's BS. We've already disproved a lot of that. But he still found there was differences. And one of them, he wrote the 3 books that are basically like, massive books. But I'll summarize one of my favorite points in his books, which is that the different parts of the brain see the world in different ways, and they value the world in different ways. And the left brain sees the world in control, use. How does this help me survive? How can I solve this particular problem? It's really helpful. It's really valuable. It's something that's evolved over millions of years. The right brain sees, okay, there's something beyond that. There's relationship. Is this person a good person or not? Is this thing true or not true? Wow, like the universe is incredible. Like there's something sacred about this experience or my life, or there's basically levels of value. And what the Matrix, the zombie economy, however you want to frame it, it flattens all of that into one thing. It takes all that color in our life and turns it into black and white, and it makes all of our ideologies black and white.
Pragmatism, efficiency.
Yep.
That's it.
That's
growth, economic growth. And you
Growth.
said it's not working. I think you're right, but isn't it working for just a very few in our society?
It is. It is. I think what we've seen over the last 40 years is that there's been a concentration of wealth to the very top of our system, to the very top. And the analogy I like to use is all the blood basically is going to the brain, back to the brain again.
Yeah.
To the very few people that have wealth. Most people right now are in some level of precarity, even like white collar jobs, managerial folks. Like there's just not the stability there was 20 or 30 years ago, and that has an impact on relationship. If you're always insecure about your time and your money, do you really feel like you have the ability to go and engage and be a part of community? Or do you need to maybe work that second job? Or maybe I need to hustle, have a little side hustle on, to keep this thing going. It just saps that communal life and that ability to just go out and, have hobbies.
Well, you got to be in survival mode at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, that, I've been a part of efforts to try to communicate to the top about that. Mm-hmm. And part of what we were communicating to them is like, hey, would you want to go watch NFL games if all the best players just went to one team? Mm-hmm. No. And would the NFL actually be a thriving business? No. I mean, you actually look at the enterprise value of the different NFL teams. There's one thing that happens every year. The loser, what happens to the loser? The loser gets the worst gets access to the best, right? There's
we talk about with the draft. Yeah.
The draft system, right? So the draft system is a great example of how do you keep a game competitive and engaging where everyone's excited about the game. We're not in that game anymore. We're in a game where it's more like baseball. All the money goes to the Yankees or a few other these small teams that have all the money and have all the resources, right? So I think that's a concern that I've been writing about is what happens when you do that and how does that impact social trust? If you have just a few people thriving and a majority of people languishing, it's not a good recipe for politics, and that's what we're seeing right now in our politics. It's just total distrust. And legitimacy of the Congress is at the lowest it's ever been in our history because people just feel disenfranchised. They feel like they're not part of the system.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a pay-to-play system at this point. So I don't think you're getting access to a congressperson unless you can finance their next campaign. Because frankly, if they don't get that next campaign finance, their survival as far as their livelihood is, again, I don't want to take blame off of anybody, but, if you're getting into politics right now, you are a fundraiser. Andrea, did you have something?
I was going to ask more questions about the draft, but I used my context clues and I think I get it.
Just found that to be really helpful, like analogy of okay, we're playing a game where all the best parts of the team go to the top. We're kind of sending everything to the head of the body, not the blood, and it's just dangerous for the whole system. Or you could think about it like a pyramid, like as a pyramid, a better, setup, or an inverted pyramid where all the top of the pyramid is at all the weight is at the top. It's just not a good system. It's not stable.
I'm going to bet I'm one of 3 people who didn't know that the worst teams have is it like first access to
first round?
That analogy is really helpful and really interesting and something I hadn't thought of that way. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, also, what I got from that, Ron, is that if I ever am in a room with a powerful billionaire, that the way to help them increase their understanding of the way the world works is to use the NFL as an analogy. And I think that's I think what we can all learn from that, because say you get in there and that person's in there and for some reason, even though you have nothing to offer them, they're talking to you. And you can just go ahead and lay out a pretty simple analogy to help them understand. And hopefully at that point, give some of their money away to people that need it.
Yeah, I think the more apt I think thing for them is to actually show the numbers. Is that when you have an economy like this, in terms of all the money going to the top, actually it's destabilizing So what happened to the people, I'm living in Paris. What happened to people about a mile from me that put all the money to the top, in
Yeah,
1789,
I was going to
right?
bring that up because you said,
That's what we talked about with them.
Yeah,
That's
for all
we use NFL, but the next thing we talk about is, hey, every time there's concentration at the top, it doesn't end well for the people at the top.
That's Ken Burns.
It's not
man.
stable.
I'm so glad
totally.
you brought up history, because earlier, Ron, when you said, because and please, it's been a while since I've studied the French Revolution, but and you are right there, which puts you in the perfect position. But when you said white collar folks are starting to lose their jobs to AI, for me, that went right to, okay, well, truly the French Revolution, my understanding is that when the people who were poorest in society and had really no voice spoke up, they really didn't get very far. But it took the sort of mid-level aristocrats to get together, to join together. And those were actually the folks that sort of tipped the scales to be able to storm the castle. So, I mean, does that...
I'm not encouraging the French Revolution. Let's just make sure that I'm clear on that front, because it was nasty, bloody, horrible, and I think, in terms of the AI job loss, there's a lot of froth about whether that's happening now or not. But I think we're going in that direction where there's going to be a significant impact. I think every time we've had an industrial revolution, we've been through 4 of these already, or we're in the 4th. There's been a big gap between the old jobs that end and then the new jobs are created. Now, there's just also unknown in this situation. Are there going to be new jobs? Like, there's just a lot of unknowns, right? So, but what I was talking about earlier is there's, even before AI came on the scene, there's a lot of instability for people at the middle part of our economy, even upper middle class, in a way we haven't seen in a long time, and that is dangerous for our society. In terms of what I think, if you look at the past 250 years, positive things that have happened in those similar kind of situations, whether that's in the UK or even in the United States. If you think about what happened in the end of the Gilded Age and the beginning of our 30s and 40s, that time period, is there was a recognition that social trust is important. There was a recognition that where solidarity between different people was important, and there were changes that were made over time to prevent some of that drastic, scary, revolutionary things that happened either in France, or if you look at what happened in the 30s in Germany or Russia. FDR and some of those leaders, I don't want to get in too far into politics, but some of those leaders, they chose to say, hey, let's go a path where we think about solidarity and trust and the common good, and make sure that the middle class and working class have a way to be a part of this, because it's actually going to make us more stable, and we can actually defend ourselves and be stronger from a geopolitical standpoint. So we have seen people done it and navigated it in a way that's positive, that didn't lead to the French Revolution, which was a totally destructive force. It totally upended the society, and I don't think it's ever really fully healed from that experience.
Welcome back, Marlon Helps. As per usual, here we are.
I feel helped. I feel helped after talking to Ron.
Yeah.
I'm always picturing someone who is trying to get their hands on AI, like twisting their mustache and like thinking about how I don't know, like they're going to ruin Earth and move to Mars or something. That's just all I think about. But talking to Ron, at least I know there's another option. Even if people don't choose it, even if they choose profit over people, there's another option, that some guardrails or some, I'll call them hashtag Ron's rules.
Oh, I love that.
We'll see if he picks it up. How can I help?
So here's the question. We're talking about the main solution, which we'll get into next week, is connection, which we talk about every week. We talk a lot about isolation in this episode, and how a lot of us are maybe a little rusty post-pandemic, post-lockdown, post-COVID. We're not really post-COVID. Disclaimer, have to say that. But let's say I'm ready to...
Mid
Yeah.
2020s. I
Yeah.
feel like that's all you need to say. This is the time
Everybody
we're
knows.
in. It's easier to talk to a machine than it is to a person. Machines are typically, more frictionless and maybe feel better in the moment. But
Yeah.
Does your question have to do with
It
that?
100% it does. So let's say I'm ready to reconnect with people out in the world, but I'm feeling really out of practice and anxious about it. What can I do when I feel socially out of practice, but I want to reconnect?
I love this question. When I had a private practice,
It was Hannah's question. She crushed it.
hell yeah. Nice job, Hannah. So this question rules, and it's actually a lot easier than you think. It's easier than we all think because we overthink it.
Are you sure? Because I think it's the hardest thing for me.
It may be
make
really
me feel
difficult. Well, finding out, and knowing what you should do versus actually doing it, that's where the courage, the risk, comes in, or it feels risky anyway. It really, it's important to connect. You don't want to spend your whole life knowing that the one thing that gives us the most meaning is sharing this life with others, and then get to the end of it and realize you shared it with a effing bot. Man, this is edgy. This show's edgy now.
Yeah, that's right. I love it.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you reconnect? Tell me this, because in private practice, I would hear things like, I don't know what to say. I get into a conversation and I get quiet, or like everyone's telling interesting stories and I don't have any interesting stories to tell, or, it just feels intimidating and scary and risky.
Exactly.
But let's go back to the basics. Like what would you, and this is not condescending. I think it's just true. I have a preschooler.
Mm-hmm.
He's 4 years old. He is already good at making friends, better than a lot of adults, better than me at certain times of my life. What do you think I tell him?
By finding things they have in common with the other kids, sharing toys and stuff, right?
Totally. Even if he doesn't have something in common, he's a little advanced for a 4-year-old, but even if he doesn't have something in common, he'll remember what that other person likes and ask about it.
Yeah.
People are we're
really
pretty much all the
sweet.
same. Unless you're a sociopath, all you want to do is connect and talk
Yeah.
about things you like and hear and, be seen and see others deeply. That's what life's all about. And it starts really small. It doesn't have to be, I think we watch too much, whether it's TV or people faking it on other mediums. But really, a real friendship starts with sometimes commonalities, but just a dedication to finding out about that other person. And it starts with kindness.
Totally.
And actually, and Ron's talked about some of the studies that like opened up people to the first thing that you can do to kind of break the ice is just do or say something kind.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Can you remember? I know you have a lot of friends that you've had for a very long time, right? Since you were young, you've got a handful.
I don't like to brag.
But do you remember? Like, can you think of an example of like? I'm thinking of my first really good friend that I made as a young person. What the like instigating the catalyst for that friendship?
Well, you tell
was.
us. I feel like that's the most interesting thing we're going to hear.
Oh, the moment itself isn't interesting, but it's such a small moment. That's what's making me think about it. And I was new to a school, and Megan had a necklace that I really liked that had a little alien on it because it was the late 90s or early 90s at that point. And so that stuff was so cool. And we talked about her necklace, and then we never stopped talking.
So you made, just based on that necklace, would you say like, hey, cool necklace?
Yes. I mean, like probably those exact words. And
But that
that's
was
all
a
it
little
took.
risky. I mean, like how old were you?
Was fifth grade.
Because fifth grade, I feel like she could be like, oh yeah, whatever, or like not answer you. But you took a little bit of a risk there, and it was kind. She knew right away.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, oh, this person, I know they don't totally suck because they like something similar and they were nice about it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great idea. sometimes, and back to the episode with Ron, he brought up a real person and a deal person. You don't want to be a deal person because then you're just, showing that kindness for not real reasons. But if you're really looking for friends, even, if you're older and at a stage in your life, like I am, where you spend a lot more time at home and with the family because they need you than you do with your friends, then you got to be intentional. You got to call people, text them, and don't just text them like updates. Like, I don't want to offend anyone, but if you're still sending out a card that just talks about you and your family and it's just a bunch of info, like that might be interesting to some people, but that's not how to connect.
No.
And it's not how to stay connected either. So, it's fine if you do it, but don't have that be the only thing.
Right.
You need to reach out and ask people about themselves and learn and grow together. But it all starts with cool necklace, dude.
So what's the homework this week for our listeners then?
Find someone that needs some kindness. That is not hard to find. You know who it is. You probably had a face flash. And if it's you, that's a thing too. Maybe you need to start with yourself. Tell yourself something that you need to hear.
That's really nice.
Well, it's true. It's true. And if you can't find anything that you love about yourself right away, think about the fact that you are walking and talking or even existing and thinking. That is a miracle in and of itself. And that just that you exist makes you infinitely valuable. Mm-hmm. So remember that. And that's why someone might want to hear a compliment or a kind word from you, because you're a walking miracle already. Thanks for joining us today. We hope it helped. Stay connected with us at This Helps Podcast or at thishelpspodcast.com. The best way to support the show is by leaving a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you say something nice about me, I will use it to bolster my self-esteem from this point on the rest of my life. It really does make a difference for me, my self-worth, and for people to find the show.